in the world. Hope you're having a great day. I'm delighted to have Kevin back. What a week it's been, folks. Every single day there is more and more revelations coming out, and Kevin has been talking about this stuff for a lifetime, totally vindicating allegations he's made that people have lent on him as being a bit too conspiratorial. Well, there's allegations of people being unalived, babies being genetically modified, people being tortured, ritualistic stuff. One of Epstein's bank accounts is Baal, as in the cult of Baal. We have got Wexner with his Dybbuk demon. We have got Bush and Clinton accused of being president when a baby was unalived. And on and on and on it goes in these endless tunnels under the island. Epstein even talking about the construction of them in emails. These are all the things Kevin's been talking about. So, as this has evolved, Kevin, in the past few days, you must be sitting back thinking, wow, finally, the truth, we're getting nearer to the truth here.
Oh, definitely. It's always good to be vindicated, but also by doing that, more people come forward. And we've had two more come insiders with some very startling information about kind of the longer history of this. So we're getting into all that.
And when you saw the revelations, what so far has surprised you the most?
Well, in a sense, it's not surprising because the method being used of creating a massive paper trail is really similar. We went through all of this in Canada with the genocide. Basically, what you do when you're sitting on evidence, and they taught us this in law school many years ago, you create a paper trail. And that is, you name a lot of people, you create, in this case, Trump's lawyer, who's now the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, made the incredible statement that with 3.5 million pages of evidence, he found, quote, nothing to prosecute. That's kind of like the statement, yes, we're doing a big whitewash here, folks. So what you do is you when your opposition is sitting in a lot of hard evidence, you flood the court with erroneous stuff. And it's always sexual in nature, and it always involves a lot of people. That way you lose the focus on the real gems that have been exposed. And I want to talk about some of those gems that have been uncovered with two more people who come forward who are very highly placed. Very exciting information they brought forward about this long-term purpose of Little St. James Island and what was going on there in a bigger sense. Besides all the other atrocious stuff you've been describing, there's a deeper agenda happening. And so in a way, the existence of a paper trail, the fact that they're redacting so much of these emails and other things, clearly, and even the language they're using, all of these people, like when Musk, and even in the redacted stuff, they admitted that Musk's name kept coming up all the time, as did Trump's. When they respond, they say, these allegations are completely false. They don't say false, they say completely false. And that adverb is very important because, or adjective, because it's a way for them to say, yes, it's true. But, to turn black into white and white into black, which is the whole purpose of this exercise, you've got to use these mind games on people. So I think it's important not to get caught up in a lot of the details. I mean, a lot of people have been named, including, people like Ehud Barak from Israel, all of these people who visited the island. But again, it's all being talked about perversions done to children or sexual activity, which of course you got in Canada. All of the emphasis on the reports coming out of the Indian residential school death camps always had to do with rape, nothing else. Always about rape of children, not about sterilizations, murders, all of these other things indicating genocide. All of that was covered under this, blanket thing that excites people, hearing about sexual crimes. So, that's part of what's going on. But if you'll allow me, I'm going to kind of allude to some of this stuff, these bigger things. There's a character who hasn't been mentioned yet, and he's integral to all of this, and with Musk's Neuralink project, which is tied into his involvement with Epstein and Trump. And the guy's name is Michael Persinger, and I sent you his picture. He was one of the leading neuroscientists, and an American who immigrated to Canada his whole life, who worked in Laurentian University in Sudbury, which was a university founded by all three of the churches that did the genocide, the Catholic, the Anglican, the United Church. and a lot of advanced experimentation went on. Now, Persinger developed this procedure where he, and let me read kind of the description of it. Persinger theorized that when communication between the cerebral hemispheres of the brain is disrupted by magnetic fields, the right hemisphere's sense of itself intrudes into the left hemisphere's awareness. This phenomena is interpreted by the brain as indicating that there's an external presence. So he called it a God helmet. He'd put this on and people would have a sense that God or some other presence is there. But in fact, what it did, it used electricity to so traumatize the brain that you could create a new personality. You could create literally a new presence, a sense of a different reality altogether. He received heavy CIA MK Ultra funding for this. And this was the basis of the later Neuralink chips. Now, what was going on at Little St. James Island was they were taking this research as early as 1999. Don't forget, Epstein buys the island in 1998. In 1999, this thing came out, which, if people remember, called the Project for a New American Century, PNAC. And it was a think tank report that said, with America's economy in decline and its position in the world in decline, how can we maintain mastery of the world? And one of the discussions in the PNAC document was how to control the thoughts of whole populations. And Little St. James Island, behind the cover of all the perversions and the wild sex parties and everything going on, behind that, there was a think tank being created, and it's called Q. Now, remember the stuff, the Q drops, the QAnon stuff that came up right when Trump gets elected the first time. Suddenly, this QAnon appears, saying, creating a whole scenario where there's a satanic cabal and they're trying to take over, and only Donald Trump is fighting them. Well, it turns out QAnon was a creation of this Trump-affiliated think tank. Because what they had to do was make everyone think this is a good and evil battle. Trump's leading it. And, so it spun. And don't forget, that was right before COVID. So COVID came in under Biden. And so the whole anti-COVID resistance, freedom movement, got corralled by Trump. Because all of these QAnon drops coming out of Trump's own think tank was saying, Trump's the hero. He opposes vaccinations. He rallied the whole resistance movement under his control. That's why he got reelected. Half the electorate, they're convinced that he's liberating them. And if you talk to any of these solid Trump people, they all mouth this. All the stuff they read on QAnon. Well, this group Q, that was the name of their think tank, Q, and it came from a word Quell, Quell in German. And that means source, the source of all knowledge and information. And the purpose of this Q think tank was to find ways of creating a final absolute control over the human mind. It involved not only Michael Persinger's research, which they built on. Musk took that up, and really it was a threefold connection between Gates, Trump, and Musk. They're the driving force behind all this. Now, what's interesting, as you know, Epstein dies in his jail cell from, quote, suicide in August, let me get the dates right on that, August 2019. Well, exactly 1 year to the day before that, guess who else dies? Michael Persinger, August 10th, 2018. Okay, boom, boom. Now, don't forget the other deaths related to these revelations. Thomas Bowers, the Deutsche Bank officer who'd given a lot of loans to this thing going on and Trump's whole project. He dies suicide in Miami Beach, November 2019, right after Epstein. And we know about Virginia Giuffre, of course, the eyewitness to all these things, suicided last year in April. I mean, so it's kind of like the last scene in Hamlet. There's just the bodies are accumulating all over the place. And it's because there's this bigger thing going on. Now, let me just kind of do a little, and I'm actually doing an article on this where we're showing all the links, and I'll tell you the sources of this in a minute. You've got the Q group. To develop this, they're building it on the theory of Persinger and Musk. They create the habitat, the safe habitat, and very biotech firms provide the technology for it. including it led to Neuralink. Trump is, with the help of the senior Democrats, is creating the political vehicle for all this happening. And they have now a private army in the form of ICE to enforce this new regime. Now, let me just close that first part by saying what the sources are in this. One of the reasons we're able to piece this together, and don't forget from the case we did against the present Pope and Trump and everything back in the fall, remember we found that the Ninth Circle ceremonies that these guys were attending, both Epstein and Trump, they were involved, they had a military experimental application too. They're actually using the Ninth Circle ceremonies as, you know, as a means to experiment on children. So there's that connection there. But two sources came forward, and what's interesting is I'm acquainted with both of them from my own life. I'm not going to say who they are yet, but I have personal acquaintance with these people. One of them is a biotech corporate executive, retired now. He was with something called Genentech. Genentech was the first biotech firm ever created in America in 1976. It's now a subsidiary of Roche Pharmaceuticals, which heavily tied to the Bush family and bioweapons. And this Genentech corporate executive confirmed everything I was describing about the long-term connection to Epstein and the island and the PNAC, Project for a New American Century plan behind all of this. The second source is a senior biophysicist with the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation in Seattle. He works with the Institute for Disease Modeling, and he provided a lot of the technical knowledge to our court that showed that, you know, this is genuine, that these the Neuralink implants that are happening now are part of a whole plan that started decades ago to how to control, using the Persinger research, you basically create a different reality altogether around somebody, so that people who are caught in this electronic matrix don't perceive reality anymore. Their only sense of things is what they're receiving through the artificial technology. Now, let me read a quote from Michael Persinger. This is from 2009. Quote, "Since the 1990s, a potential has emerged to directly influence and control a major proportion of the 6 billion brains of the human species without mediation through classic sensory modalities, by generating neural information within a physical or electronic medium within which all members of the species are immersed." In other words, the internet, iPads, etc., right? And now with the direct implantation of the Neuralink. So he had the template for the whole thing they're doing now. And the thing about the Epstein cabal is it was the focus. It provided the kind of hide in plain sight cover for all of this stuff. The old saying is, when you want to hide a knife as a murder weapon, you don't hide it away by itself. You put it with a fork and spoon. And that way, the knife seems harmless because it's with a fork and spoon. Same thing by analogy here. You mask all of this plan around a supposed kind of sexual perversion network, because that's all you ever hear about, just all these individuals involved in perversions. Everyone's focused on that, like they were in the Indian death camps. And they're not looking at this deeper thing that all of these people were and are connected with. And frankly, it's rolling out this year, as we mentioned the last time. Musk has now announced they're producing these Neuralink chips in the millions. They're going to mass produce them. And this is the year with ICE. They're already implanting them in a large way with a lot of people stuck in the private prisons. And when you look at the whole history of how Trump got in for the second term, the senior Democrats colluding with him, it's part of the whole big plan. And we're heading into this literal Orwellian nightmare this year. And Epstein is kind of the, in a way, the least harmless of all of these people, right? Because you want to always focus on the least harmful one, the one who is least implicated in these things. You know, my reading of Epstein is, yeah, he did all these perversions and that, but he was basically a playboy who would like to operate in these circles, and they used him as a little hand puppet to prevent all this other stuff being exposed. So let me just leave it at that, because I know that's hitting people with a lot of stuff, but we can get into more of that detail.
Kevin, you've absolutely nailed it. We've got 2,000 watching live right now. The link to Kevin's book, I'm putting it in the live chat. All of Kevin's links are in the description box. Please support his important work. He's had multiple threats to life. He's had attempts on him, and he's sacrificed a lot to get to this point. And it's great that these files have come out and vindicated his work. One of the people he touched on, is Gates. And this is the guy who supposedly, whenever there's a crisis in the world, all the media flock to him and get his wise advice. He's saving Africa. He's got the GMO rights and all this stuff. He's got investments in. And, we're told that he just made this multi-billion-dollar business out of his garage, this little geek's backstory. Anyway, in the emails, Kevin, it's come out that he was trying to procure drugs to give to his wife surreptitiously because he'd contracted an STD from a Russian lady of the night. So we're seeing how they pretend to be virtuous and pillars of community, but behind the scenes, they're up to all kinds of crazy things.
Well, yeah, and I mean that goes in that circle. I mean, I remember when I first began to work in 40 years ago now, doing street ministry in Vancouver. I got contacted by a guy, Jack Webster. He was kind of the major media personality in Vancouver, and he said, "I hear you've been talking about the Vancouver Club," and he took me out for dinner, and he said, confidentially, "I've known that children are traded in there like a fine bottle of wine among all the elites. I've known about it for years, but if I ever talked about it, I'd be in False Creek, dead. And I know what goes on. We all know what goes on in those circles, and there's not a thing you can do about it because no one wants to believe that about them." Right? So, I mean, that's the best protection, and it's everywhere. So the thing about a paper trail is it not only is designed to distract, with a lot of, you inundate people with information. It's called inoculation. You inoculate the public with an idea, and it's always sexual in nature, right? It's considered almost benign. Okay, he has weird sexual taste, but so what? The other thing about a paper trail, though, is it always leads nowhere. What's the outcome? So we learn all this stuff about them. What's the consequence? Are any of them going to be reprimanded? Or are they going to go to jail? So it leaves people around, they're just chasing their tails, following the latest story about what perversion these guys did. Meanwhile, the bigger drama that we've been describing that's being imposed on the whole world now, that's lost in the shuffle. So we got to always keep holding up what we know and separate the wheat from the chaff on this whole thing, right?
So the news story about Musk then that the media are concentrating on, is that a distraction as well? Because there's an email where Musk is begging Jeffrey to come to the island and party. He doesn't want to kick back. He wants to go on the wildest night of the year. And Musk is saying since then, he's frantically denying everything, just like Bill Gates is. And he's saying he never went to the island, therefore there was no wrongdoing, therefore he's absolved of this matter. But doesn't that email show intention?
Sure, but again, intent to do what? To go have a fun time with the party. Again, it's a benign issue. It's not a criminal issue, right? So the criminality here is that it's Musk is the Joseph Mengele of America. He's got a plan to exterminate the human race by integrating human consciousness in with the machine, right? And using the Persinger research, and which the CIA leapt on in the 1990s. The CIA was using that in their spying techniques, psychic, means to spy on others. But that was, again, the cover story. They were fashioning a whole way. How do you control the whole bioenergy and mental energy of whole populations? And that's what's happening now. And I'll give you a hard example of that. When I did my first interview in Vancouver, it was in 1996 on a radio station that had about 500,000 listeners. After I first began to talk about what happened to Native children, I had, from my records, 1,362 phone calls on my little pager. Just kept accumulating people. That's a response of about 0.5% to 1%. When we did your show where we had 300,000 views?
Yeah.
I got 6 responses. That's 0.0025%. So in those years, it's gone from that level of outrage and response to nothing. Now, I can't believe that if anything, people who are more aware now with more access to information would be even more interested. But it's being whooshed. Now, what's missing there is that capacity to act on conviction. And when you look at the Persinger research, he was building on the use of a chemical drug called chlorpromazine, which was used in the Indian schools. And what it is, it was developed by Nazi researchers in Laurentian University and the Lakehead Psychiatric Hospital just down the road in Thunder Bay. And it said you can create a robot human being who doesn't lose consciousness but has complete lack of interest. So you can't use critical intelligence. You can't act on your conviction. You're basically a zombie. And I think it's an indication that the human race is far down that road now. It isn't just something that's going to happen in the future. It's already started in a big way. And I meet this all the time in groups I speak. Anyone on the internet I'm talking to, they can't act. I say, well, have you gone out and picketed at a church or done some posting? No, they're just talking online all the time. So people have lost that ability to act. And that's what you need. You can have people talking on the internet all day long. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference. They don't want people to act because the system is so wobbly now and coming down. It's so corrupt. They're afraid people are going to act, and take away that ability to act. And what does this all matter? You're functional slaves. You're functional zombies. And that's the real issue we want to focus on, how this is already in place. And we're seeing it with the ICE detention camps and all of this stuff we've described before. So that's the immediacy I want to say to people watching that, if you use these devices, your mind is not your own. Your emotions, and, it's interesting, the area of the brain that Persinger was targeting for these, putting the electric, separating the two hemispheres of the brain, it was the temporal lobe. That's the area you lobotomize. It involves memory, intelligence, creativity, emotions, everything that makes us human. Temporal lobe. That's what's targeted by all this electronic stuff.
So is the goal then to turn us into zombies with the fusion of tech into the human brain and body?
Yes, and it's, when you think of it logically, you got a corporate system that sees people already as just cogs in a machine. Why wouldn't we literally become a cog in a machine? From a corporate point of view, it's the most cost efficient. You turn everybody into little components, right? And that's kind of an inevitable process in the system we've got now, in a way. It isn't just because of a few bad guys doing it to us, because why do we allow them to do it to us, right? That's what I mean. We're far down the road in that ability to resist. And so we're going to kind of pull back what we still can, right?
So you said there's parallels with Watergate. For our younger viewers, could you explain what that means?
Well, the Watergate thing was in the early 70s, in a very naive time. Nixon had a whole group they called the plumbers. They went in and they burglared not just the Democratic Party, but any opposition. Nixon had a whole enemies list, right, of people he went after. He had the Internal Revenue go after them. The FBI, bugged them in the whole bit. All this illegal stuff. Now, when the Watergate inquiry started, and we know this from the source Deep Throat, who was Mark Felt. He was a former assistant director of the FBI. There's been a film made about him. And the White House, Nixon, ordered the FBI not to investigate. And instead, they put out this bogus report. Well, we found no evidence of presidential involvement in the Watergate break-in. Just like Trump's former defense lawyer during the 2024 business fraud trial he faced, Todd Blanche. Suddenly, he's the deputy attorney general and say, there's nothing to prosecute here. So the analogy, it makes Nixon look like a Boy Scout in comparison, the extent of this now. So the whole machinery of the state on an international level now is doing what Nixon tried to do in a small way. And so that secret government system was actually set up by, after Nixon. Dick Cheney was a junior executive at the White House during the Nixon administration. That's how he learned his stuff, right? So anyway, it's history replaying itself, only on a much more serious, bigger way, right?
So Kevin, they said they've only released half of these files. There's another 3 million. Can you imagine what's in the rest that they're holding on to?
You're never going to see what's in the rest. Anything that's in any way of a criminal nature is going to be redacted out. And you've seen those images of the emails and the pictures of just black lines through everything, like typical government investigation. Again, we've had direct experience of this up in Canada with they had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission set up by the perpetrators. The churches and government that ran these death camps investigated themselves with their own little TRC. But the churches were given 6 months by the government to go through all their files and remove anything they didn't like. That's an investigation. They call that Truth and Reconciliation in Canada, right? So, the template is there. Every ruler does it in the same way. And they just rely on the gullibility of people to get away with it, and also inability to see the forest for all the individual trees that they kind of lead you into this jungle, and you can't see the bigger picture of what's going on, right?
Becky wants to know, what is the bottom line of all of this? Is it mind control?
It's more than mind control. It's actual bioenergetic control. So we're not even human. It's like this. When you're out in the woods, after a while, you begin to feel really good and calm, and you're reflecting the energy of nature. That's who we are naturally. Even our low hertz brain frequency is the same as Mother Earth. You put yourself in a electronic environment, and you get technoformed or adapted to that technological environment. So you're not even human anymore. You're being, like, the term is assimilation, which it means to eat. You're being absorbed into a machine. And the worst case scenario is another generation, maybe even sooner, you won't even see human beings anymore. There would be cybernetic organisms, and eventually, I mean, you've seen the sci-fi movies, how people are absorbed into these machine matrices. And it's omnicide. It's the extermination of the human race, not simply mind control, right?
So we'll be redundant at that point.
Yeah, that's right. The land of no one, as the Vatican once called any area that wasn't controlled by the Vatican, was called the land of no one. There were no people there. Well, ironically, they're creating such a world where there won't be any people left.
So, the court stuff you've got going on with Trump and the other big names, does the revelations in the files affect this at all?
Well, in a big way, as I mentioned, those two new sources from Genentech and the Gates Foundation were people who, do you remember Albert Bourla was one of the ones convicted? And the Pfizer CEO, well, this fellow at Genentech knows Bourla intimately, and he sees which way the wind is blowing. And I tell you, it's interesting knowing these people, as I have for many years. They started out okay. I don't want to say what my relationship has been with them yet, but I knew these people when they were human beings, but I also saw how they got changed when they got into that world. And there's a lingering, even in the most corrupt person, there's a lingering conscience, unless they're a total psychopath, which I don't think a lot of these people are. I think they're just a prisoner of their circumstance and, wanting to go with the flow and hold on to their comforts like everybody does, right? But there's a twinge of guilt in them. And it's that thing that they realize now that, as my friend put it, all we need is an example of one person who never gives up and never backs down, and that inspires the rest of us to come forward. And we're seeing that happen now, Sean, in a bigger way. We're seeing a 100th monkey effect on this. And that's why I think, there's a horrible, gloomy prospect here, but there's a great light building at the same time. And I see it everywhere, people on the ground say, okay, enough's enough. Now's the time. That's why we go on about these sovereign republics and assemblies and courts all the time. Now we got to take the whole instrument power back into our own hands to stop these criminals.
So Kevin's an expert on exposing the Vatican with a focus on the Ninth Circle rituals. And there was an allegation in the Epstein files release. Someone had made a report whereby Clinton and Bush Sr. were present when a baby was unalived. And also some young girls were getting gang you-know-whatted, and they were bleeding because it was so savage. And Bush and Clinton were present. Do you think there's any credence into those allegations?
Absolutely. No, I mean, the thing is, it crosses party lines. It's like that picture of Hillary and Trump and Cardinal Timothy Dolan all sitting there laughing together. It's like, no, and I've read a lot of other corroborating evidence about the Clintons and all that. It's of course, it's totally believable, but again, it's what they're emphasizing, right? And it's a sign of everything we're talking about, ultimately, right?
Yeah, I've got on the image of Bill Clinton in the blue dress with the red shoes on that was in Epstein's property. Do you think that's Epstein just, exercising power over Bill Clinton because he's got him compromised in a honey trap operation?
I don't know if it is much of a compromise. So the guy wears a dress. So what? I mean, again, these are harmless, benign things. It's part of the inoculation strategy. They did this in Canada. They would put out, when our stuff began to surface 25 years ago after our tribunal, the media suddenly began to put in articles about, well, this native man's come forward about how he was sexually harmed once and denied food. And then another story about another benign incident. And after a while, people read this and say, I'm sick of hearing about all these native kids. I mean, I got harmed as a kid. What's so special about them? And it's all designed to inoculate people against the bigger issue was mass extermination. So that's why I kind of question, well, ultimately, who cares if Bill Clinton wears a dress? It's like,
So, OD wants to know, are we basically getting turned into energy sources for AI?
well, we already are. I mean, ask anyone how much time they spend every day on their electronic media. And something like 90% of Americans are onto their iPads within 10 minutes of waking up every morning. So, I mean, we're already integrated to some degree. It's a question of are we going to carry on like that, or this counter motion. And I see it everywhere. Like in a lot of our meetings on the ground in England, in America, in Canada, people are now deliberately turning off all the machines, and they're getting outdoors, having fires. They're bringing kids and animals, they're hanging out in nature. It's beautiful. They're recovering their soul, and that's the most revolutionary thing you can do these days. Just, to do that, right?
I know, baby Ziggy's 2.5 now, and if he sees a phone around, he tries to get it. He's like so attracted to phones, and we've got to, really keep him off them, because I imagine it's just not a brain rot, isn't it? So Scorber wants to know, how far does it go?
Who knows? I mean, we've seen the direction it's heading, which I know is towards extermination, the human race, kind of a new species. And a lot of these technocrats and scientists applaud it. They say, well, this is the next stage in human evolution, to become inhuman, basically, to become cybernetic organisms. They say it's somehow a natural evolution. I mean, when you got that kind of thinking, you got to take the power out of those people's hands, or you're finished.
So are there steps for people in England, Canada, and the US to, bring these people to justice, or is it all bread and circuses?
Well, you can't bring them to justice right away. You can hold the system in judgment, and you do that by creating your own. You deflate their balloon by inflating your own. And we've talked a lot about that on other shows, what the Republic of Albion is doing, Canada, the new constitutional conventions in America. They're doing exactly that. They're passing laws. They've already passed laws saying we don't acknowledge the Trump administration, no more executive orders, we don't acknowledge them, we're withholding federal funds, keeping them in our community. But the important thing is to do it as an assembly, passing your own law, not as an individual trying to fight the Goliath, because it's not going to work. You've got to organize in your communities. That's where it begins. We've got a whole way people are doing that right now. It's what I do most of my days. That's why I'm traveling right now.
So when they put us out of work with AI and robots, etc., there's this theory that people are just going to be assigned a universal basic income. And AB wants to know, what is your opinion on the probability of a universal basic income?
It's one of the hooks they use to get people, oh, good. You mean now I'll have enough to survive every day, right? It's a hook. As you know, the plan is to get rid of all the useless mouths, right? And they already show how they do that. We have examples all through history of how genocidal systems do that. So no, don't get drawn in by that. And when people start panicking about, oh, digital currency, I'm going to lose everything, don't feed it. First of all, at a personal level, do not give in to panic or fear, right? Know that we're stronger than they are, and that we have to reach out to each other. Don't sit alone in your room. Start coming to our assemblies and these other actions, and build that confidence on the ground. So we do have alternatives to these cyber systems they try to lock us all into, right?
We've got over 3,000 watching live. I'm going to put Kevin's book link in the chat again if you want to do a deeper dive. All of his links are in the description, including his contact.
Can I just mention one thing about the book? This is one of our most popular items, along with the book on the Vatican crimes, Dethroning a Rogue Power. Now, Amazon, people have been ordering this. They are announcing that, we can't print any of these anymore. And they only print them on demand. So what do you mean you've run out of them? I mean, they're blocking the sale of this now. So we're looking for publishers in other countries. But this is a book you should get from us and others. It lays out kind of a whole philosophy and plan of how to declare that sovereignty.
So please keep your questions coming in for Kevin, folks. I love all the different angles, unexpected angles and lanes we go down with your questions. So, Debbie, do you think they will actually get away with it?
Not if we don't let them get away with it. But that's the subjective factor. All of us. It's a question you should ask yourself, not looking to somebody else to lead you, but how am I going to stop this? And how do we reach out to each other to start extending our whole grassroots revolution that's going on across the planet, right?
So Brindav wants to know about any suggested groups in the UK. We did live stream with the Albion people. Do you want to just update on that?
Yes, they. Oh, and by the way, there was 13,000 views on that, and they got tremendous response. A lot of volunteers, a lot of new citizens. republicofalbion.com is the website. Go to that and reach out to the organizers. There's an email, a way to contact them right there. They're organizing all over the country now, and they're beginning to plan some new retreats up in Scotland, in Wales, and all these beautiful spots in England so famous for, right?
Yeah. And next question then is, are you able to put out time and locations of meetings? I imagine that's something they'd have to contact you directly about. You don't want to just announce things like that on the airwaves because it gets sabotaged, wouldn't it?
Yep. Oh, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, please. And you got my contact email is all up there and everything. Just look on the thing.
All of the contact, everything is in the description. Is Kevin allowed to travel?
Well, by staying off the radar and by doing the least conspicuous things, yeah, it's usually okay. Not crossing borders. It'll be a challenge trying to get into the States. Or the places where I've had the biggest trouble is in Commonwealth countries, Canada and England. I was locked up in the immigration prison in London and deported in 2011. But the thing is, if you've got enough light on you, they can't touch you. And I've experienced that time and again. And I don't know how to interpret that some days, but I'm still going and I'm still able to operate. Except the people around me tend to get targeted. So that's why we have to be really kind of careful how we work.
Can Kevin talk about the Masonic aspects, the magic of Solomon and the Mormon Church?
Well, I know about the Mormon Church the best because I've worked with survivors identical to the Ninth Circle ceremonies. In fact, they're criminals with the Vatican on these ceremonies. In Salt Lake City, they have joint ceremonies between the temple and the Catholic cathedral. The Mormons also have huge financial resources, over 160 billion in known assets, comparable to the Vatican Bank. And so they have, again, as part of the same hierarchical system that they're setting up the whole corporate model. If you got an emperor and everybody obeys it, or, eventually a machine that everybody works for. And so there's a lot, if you look in our past shows, interviews and that, we talk a lot about the Mormons. I don't know a lot about the whole Masonic thing. There's a lot of misinformation about that, a lot of different sources. So I don't like to get into an area where we can't corroborate things.
Thanks for the people trying to hype this video, but you cannot hype this video because of the amount of subscribers that we've got. You've got to have less subscribers than we've got. All right, so the next one then is, how do I find others of like mind near me?
Well, we can help you with that, but you'd have to write to us, and then we can connect you. We have the best response in America right now, the next best in England, and the hardest time I have is in Canada. It's kind of funny because only 8% of the books I sell are from Canadians, even though this whole thing started in Canada. So it shows the level of fear and censorship up here, right?
Angelums, thank you for your work, Kevin. I really feel it's too late, but disclosure is the first stage. I'm an MK Ultra victim and already have implants from the perpetrators.
Well, when you go through that, you can't help but feel that it's finished, because that's happened to us in our life, right? And I had the same feeling time and again in my life, that things get so overwhelming. Some mornings you wake up and you think we have no future. This is kind of blowback and payback for the genocide we've inflicted all over the world. But you can't, once you've done that, you've given up, you might as well die. And we can never say die.
Hey, thank you for all the on-point questions, folks. Deborah, do you think humanity will ever know the true history of who we really are?
Probably not, because, it's like what is it? How much of the universe is undetectable? 80%. It's true, and the smallest particle of us contains the totality. So that means about 80% of us we can never know. So I mean, mystery is fine, right? But it's ambiguity and lies that I can't deal with.
Maria, do you think it is a coincidence that the Pope is American?
We've gone into that in previous shows, and he's not really American. He was born in Chicago, but he did all his stuff in South America. That's why he's in a nutshell, his predecessor was guaranteeing Chinese Vatican funding for the Chinese expansion into North America. The present guy did it in South America. He helped get China in through Peru, through his diocese there. And so they're both the pro-China faction in the Vatican. He's called the second Latin American Pope in Rome.
So one of the viewers is asking, what kind of implants are they trying to put in us?
Well, what they let the public see are these Neuralink things, but they never show what's really going on. And the technology is easily decades in advance of anything we're even aware of. So in a way we're guessing, in a way we're just going on what we know. But when sources come forward like these two latest people, and they were alluding to things that I haven't talked about that I want to confirm, if at all confirmable, but it's even worse. It's actually being able to change the ether around people, so you don't need implants. You can just directly incorporate everyone, right? And if so I mean, we need knowledge to resist this stuff, because there's always an antidote to anything, right?
Peppermint is saying, how are you even permitted to speak on these things? Like I said earlier on, Kevin's had multiple attempts on his life, folks.
Yeah, don't forget, they don't simply kill people. They create, I mean, I'm operating now in what somebody once called a social death, where people are afraid to talk to you, they're afraid to have meetings with you, and that's totally the case in Canada, and so they wanted to disparage somebody and get people afraid of them. You kill somebody and that attracts more interest. So don't forget, it's one of the reasons I'm alive, but I'm also got a kind of protection that I don't totally understand, but it's worked so far, right?
Thanks for the questions about the jab, but that's one of the subjects we are banned from talking about. So Carrie wants to know, do you think China is behind this? Well, isn't China going toe-to-toe with America in the AI race?
Yeah, but again, at a corporate level, there's no competition. It's the same oligarchy operating, but they need the hand puppets of nations and conflicts to keep everybody in line. In that sense, there might be a shooting war up here in Canada over the oil and gas between China and America, part of Trump's grabbing of Greenland. My own theory is that Russia and America are uniting now, or at least creating the semblance of a unity to take out NATO from east and west. The Orwellian model could be something like that. We'll fight Eurasia for a while, and then we'll fight East Asia, right? But don't forget, Orwell said the elites of the three power blocks engage in wars not to fight each other, but to keep their own populations in line. That's the function of war and crises.
And don't they make the most money during war? The vested interests?
Always. That's what it's all about.
So you're saying there's one big network manipulating the entire world, and a lot of that is done through institutions and secret societies?
Yeah, and I think there's factions, like in anything. Like there isn't just one elite doing it. And you saw this in this whole thing with Epstein, right? I think he was set up deliberately to be kind of a scapegoat, and you can emit your 3 minutes of hate on Epstein. He's not around anymore, so it's safe to do that. Meanwhile, these other guys are operating in the back and are the real perpetrators of this particular crime.
So CM is asking, if they don't need the implants to achieve their objectives, what is the next thing which works on the mind other than frequency? Isn't all the media that we're receiving, isn't that just one big MK Ultra operation on the human mind?
Yeah, but don't forget, the mind isn't biologically based entirely. There's an overmind. There's a higher consciousness. Our minds and souls operate multidimensionally, I believe. And the real concern would be, have they pierced that? Are they trying to influence that? And I'm sure they are. So we need people who have, like, what indigenous shaman who I've worked with have a sense of that, right? from their own experiences, their own cultures. And unfortunately, in our culture, we've lost a lot of those roots. And I was happy to hear when the Albion people were meeting, they were going along the ley lines and going to the traditional spots in England where there was this sacred knowledge. And I think we have to recover that traditional knowledge that we all have as originally indigenous people, right?
Thanks for the super chat, Angela. My implant read my mind, so I couldn't run. And voice control and microphone in my ear. I have tried to be believable for 30 years. Thanks, guys. And so many people have come through this MK Ultra program, haven't they, Kevin?
Oh, yeah.
I know the Imagination podcast are doing fantastic work, and they're really exposing and interviewing a lot of the MK Ultra survivors. So shout out to them. Can anyone hide anywhere from this? That's from Marie.
We don't want to hide. We want to confront it. We want to change it. We want to go down fighting. I mean, otherwise you're not alive. You can't hide from it anyway. It's global. And that's why funny when there's a story about these people. They thought in the 1980s they were living in England. They were afraid of nuclear war, so they moved to the Falkland Islands a month before the Falkland War breaks out. So they're the Argentine soldiers right on their doorstep when they were trying to get away from war, right? It's like that old parable. You can't escape death. He always finds you, right? So the question is, how are you going to die? How are you going to live every moment?
Is there an equal shadowy cabal of elites and politicians fighting for humanity? Life will never be the same after this release from Ocean Pier.
So, we're raised in dependency, so we're always thinking there's somebody who's going to save us. There's, quote, white hats, right? There's QAnon, right? And where are these things coming from? The net effect is to keep you dependent. We don't have to do anything because these good guys are going to save us. As long as you think in those terms, it doesn't matter even if it happens. You're degrading yourself and your own power as a human being, right? So I wouldn't even think in those terms. Think, what are we going to do next, right?
How can we fight and win?
You learn that in the process of trying to do it. There isn't a blueprint. There isn't an answer beforehand. I compared to the way I was 20 years ago, forget it. I mean, I acquired this by having to struggle every day. And that's how you learn, by trying, not by sitting on the sidelines and thinking about it or talking about it.
Do you know anything about this Chagos Islands deal that Trump has agreed to with Keir Starmer?
Nope.
It looks really shady, folks. Some money's changed hands there. And what about, Mandelson being fired here in the UK? I don't know if you're following UK politics because of the revelations in the Epstein files.
Yeah, I don't even know who the guy is. I mean, again, I always say, so where will it lead?
So Mandelson was the underboss of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown.
Oh yeah,
they
right.
called him the Prince of Darkness because he was like a Machiavellian Frank Underwood figure. And after Epstein got convicted, there's all these correspondents, saying he doesn't care about his conviction for being a PDF file. They're basically, brothers and all this stuff. And just like Fergie as well. Fergie was like, marry me, and send me money. I'm just a spendthrift. And she said that she didn't care about the survivors. She pretended to care about the survivors because she had a book deal coming out.
Yes, so what?
It's still sickening, though. All right, Agent Orange, what's Kevin's opinion on the next world event? Good or bad?
I'm not sure what you mean by the next world event. You mean some cataclysmic thing that's going to happen?
Yeah, I think that's some kind of disaster. That's what he's getting, or war or something. I think they're going to bomb Iran.
Yeah, I mean, same old script. I mean, it's not new. That's the point. It like Harry Truman said, the only thing new in the world is the history you didn't know about.
What do you think of the theory that Epstein was a lone wolf acting on his own, would compromise an individual, then move up the power ladder with each successive fly trapped in his web?
This all-powerful person? No, that's silly. He's not a lone individual. It's part of this whole thing we've been describing the whole time, right?
Yeah, if he was a lone individual, why would Leon Black give him hundreds of millions? Why would Leslie Wexner give him one of the most wealthiest properties rigged up with cameras so he could do his honey trap business? Why would all these elites just, he was put into place and elevated by the deep state to perform certain functions for the network. That's what I believe.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people like him, right? Here, everywhere. I mean, why focus on him, right?
Buck Rogers, what's the deal with the no film in the Sistine Chapel? I've been there last July and it doesn't even look that old.
I'm not sure. I didn't know about that.
I didn't know about that either. How corrupt is the Vatican? We've done a whole series on Kevin with that. It's corrupt to the core. It's the biggest PDF file ring in the world.
Get that
There
book.
you go.
It'll tell you all about it. Amazon, or write to me.
Are you able to speak about Mark Carney, or is that banned?
Oh no, he's just the latest hand puppet, and he's no different than his predecessor, Trudeau or Stephen Harper before him. They both signed the law which allows China to station troops up here and no limit on their investment. So they're in the pro-China faction, just like the Vatican.
All right, folks. We've got about 5 minutes to the hour, so please get your final questions in for Kevin. Who is going to arrest them when they are the ones in power?
They're not in power. You know, we've got a whole plan of how to do this, and we're enacting it on the ground. It's small, but everything good starts small, and we'll talk about that. Just write to us.
All right. Next question. Kevin, have you looked into the Mashafa Kidan from Ethiopia? Spiritual teachings.
When I was in seminary and later, I studied about the Coptic Christians in Sudan and Egypt and how they kind of went off on their own. So that was interesting. I don't know about them now.
All right. Let's see. Musk, there is also a backlog of 10,000 people interested in getting a brain-computer interface, may be able to remote assembly of metal in body worth doing a zeolite and coriander metal detox. Question, I think this person wants your thoughts on that. I think Musk, this is allegedly a Musk quote.
Well, I don't know. I don't know enough to really...
It's very scientific, isn't it? I think he's talking about the integration of metals into human bodies.
Yep. Yeah, the bigger, like I say, the on-side agenda.
Is the clearance designation of those in New Mexico involved with advanced tech and nuclear energy? Are they referring to the New Mexico operations of Epstein, perhaps? Baby farm, all that stuff?
I'm not sure, but we know most about Phoenix, where the main Neuralink, the Barrow Neurological Institute, is based, and 6 ICE detention centers. So I don't know.
Someone's asking if you've looked at the quotes where Epstein's talking about steaks and shrimps.
What does that have to do?
All right, we looked at those last night with our podcast with Jay Dyer, who's an expert on esoteric Hollywood. So I would refer people to watch that podcast. So are these people interested in telepathy?
Which people?
Carol, these elites.
Well, that's part of the whole thing. I mean, going back in CIA research, going back decades, developing those skills.
And isn't that something we had naturally until they brainwashed us all?
Apparently. Well, I mean, in human evolution, yeah. We had that telepathic ability before speech.
So Margaret Atwood, no relation, the famous author, out of Canada, I believe. Mr. Annette, what is your greatest fear moving forward? And what is your greatest hope for the near future?
Fear as in trepidation and trembling. I don't really feel fear anymore. I used to. My biggest fear was losing my children, which I did. But you go through that fear and you come out the other end and you get stronger for it. My hope is that people go from talking and listening to acting, because that's the only way things change, and that's the only way we learn and become veterans in this fight, so our children can carry it on.
All right. Do the black nobility control the Jesuits or vice versa?
I don't know. I mean, at that level, they're so connected, like I say, but...
All right, next question. Why do you think no one is mentioning Epstein's involvement in Ukraine?
I'm not sure what his involvement in Ukraine is, so I don't want to speak out of ignorance.
My answer to that is because there's a bloody agenda there, and they don't want us looking in one direction when they're trying to get us to look in a certain direction. All right, let's see. Can we undo the black redaction? Apparently, there's ways to copy and paste it into. Some people have managed to look at unredacted versions. Let's just put it that way. And I think that's it. We're almost at the hour, and you've answered all the questions, Kevin. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers then?
Yeah, there's stuff you can do now to fight this. And it isn't just the sovereignty republics that are forming and have formed, England, America, Canada, and 6 other countries, including South Africa now. There's stuff you can do on the ground directly to stop these things. There's already people on the inside of the Neuralink Institute in the Barrow Neurological Institute who are taking action to shut it down from the inside. We've got ICE people who are informing on this. We've got sheriffs all over America now who want to shut down this whole cabal. So it's very exciting. I think America is going to be a focus of a lot of this. So please contact us and we'll get you involved in this very important movement.
And Kevin's contact is in the description box, as all his book, podcasts, all of his stuff, Telegram. There it is in the live chat again. I know you're busy, Kevin. I will let you go and close the show. And thank you for coming at such short notice, my friend. Fascinating. Cheers.
Thank you, Sean. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Kevin. Great. All right, folks. Thank you for all of your questions for Kevin. I'm back tomorrow at 3 p.m. with Matthew Steeples. And then on Saturday, we've got Ryan Dawson at 11 a.m. UK. I've got Professor Hamamoto now from 7 to 9 p.m. at night, doing a deep dive on the New Mexico baby farm eugenics side of all this. Sunday, we have got Andrew Loney in the afternoon, and then we've got Nick Bryant in the evening. And then Monday, Chris Hansen, To Catch a Predator, is going to be talking about Epstein files and Roblox. So we're going full force. We've been going full force since Friday. I'm almost losing my voice. Got my jar of honey right here to keep me going. Local honey, of course. Local bees. But thanks for tuning in. Thank you for all your questions. Hope to see some of you when we got Matthew Steeples on, 3 p.m. UK.